Welcome back to the Sens Spotlight podcast brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. And before we get started about the beauties with Betway, scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the detail section to create an account and download the app. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Betway is an official sponsor of your Ottawa Senators. Also, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and hit that button as well, that hype button on YouTube. That helps us out. And huge win for the Senators. You can feel them creeping back, getting saved. James Reimer has been Optimus Reim for at least 2 games, and we'll see if that continues. And lots to talk about from Allmark's, interview with TSN's Claire Hanna and everything else. So we got it all for you with Pierre McGuire once again. So hit it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Sens Spotlight.
Here's Alfredson, bursts the speed, gets a shot, and we score! Daniel Alfredson ends the game in overtime and sends the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And we are joined once again by Pierre McGuire. It's nice to have a goalie that makes saves. It's a pretty good win last night for the Sens in Columbus.
Very solid win. Tough building to plan, especially now they had a little bit of mojo with the coaching change. It looks like that's probably going to go away a little bit, but that's normal. I really liked James Reimer's game. I thought he was good. But this is a tale of the 2020 draft. Let's just go back and look at it. Timmy Stützle, superstar in the game. Ridley Greig, goal and assist in the game, 2020 draft. Jake Sanderson, really good. Tyler Kleven gets his first goal in almost 70 games. The 2020 draft, which should have been one of the best drafts in NHL history right after the 2003 draft, paid dividends, huge dividends for the Ottawa Senators last night.
It's crazy, that draft. And, we've talked about it just with Stützle and Sanderson, obviously, like, in a lot of ways, like I remember being, a fan at the time, and I kind of still am at times. But just with that draft, and Ottawa didn't get the first or second overall pick, and it felt like the sky was falling. And oh my God, we got the 3rd and 5th pick, and then they get the 2 best players in the draft, and then later on you get Ridley Greig, who was a menace last night in a lot of ways. Tyler Kleven played some of his best hockey of his career. I thought last night he was really good, not just the goal, but overall. And if you hit one draft class out of the park, especially with 2 top 5 picks, it typically helps your rebuild and where your team goes.
I'll give you an example. Like Timmy's so good, we all know that now. But the play that he scores on, there are a lot of guys that have the courage to try it. There are not a lot of guys that have the ability to do it. There's a big difference. So he's got the courage to try it. He also has the ability to do it. And the guy that he's working against in that situation, it's Zach Aston Reese. It's a one-on-one. He's not a great goal scorer per se. I think he only has 1 goal this year. But I've known his game a long time. He's a kid from Staten Island, New York. He played at Northeastern. He's a really good defensive player. That's what's allowed him to survive in the league for a long time, is that he's trusted by his coaches defensively. That's a hard play. And Timmy kind of made him look really pedestrian. And I give Tim a lot of credit. I don't know how much that was talked about on the broadcast, because I was going all over the place watching all these games, but I'm watching that and I'm going, ooh, that's pretty good. Pretty good.
It was, I think I tweeted, but it's like every highlight reel goal Stützle scores, like he joins another echelon of superstar stat. It's like, it just feels like this week, it's like, that goal against Montreal is like one for the ages, but and I don't think the goal in Columbus tops that, but it's a pretty darn beautiful goal. And then, he could have had 2, but he, at the end of the game, he gives it to Kachuk, who's been struggling a little bit this season, just to give him a bit of confidence. Like he's all about winning and making guys better, and he's been unbelievable late. And last night he was really good.
I wonder how many guys in the league watched what happened the night before in Toronto when Foligno and Tarasenko have a chance to score into the empty net, and Tarasenko says, "You know what? I've already had a hat trick. I'm going to move the puck over to my partner Foligno," and Foligno goes in and scores and gets his first ever hat trick. And Tarasenko's by the way, he's an amazing guy. He's an amazing guy. But I wonder how many guys in the league watch that, because I'm watching Timmy and Brady go down last night in that 2-on-0, By the way, the whole play was set up via a second effort by Ridley.
I know.
Ridley's second effort was phenomenal to get that puck out. But I wonder how many guys in the league were watching that happen in Toronto the other night, because that, to me, was a resounding reason why Minnesota's doing as well as they are. They've had a whack. Like, people don't – everybody talks about injuries here and there. I'm not sure many teams have had as many injuries for as long as the Minnesota Wild have had. I mean – and it's created all kinds of mayhem with their American League team, with their East Coast League team. Like, I'm just telling you, they've been decimated by injuries right through their entire organization. It's scary to see. And the fact that they're able to win, I think, speaks to that. And I think Ottawa will, to your point before I came on, I listened to your open, which was great, Alex. I think plays like that foster an environment that allows you to go out and win. And all of a sudden, the Jake Sanderson statement about Levy, Marilyn, that's gone away. Poof, like magic.
He talked about it to Julian McKenzie, and he apologized, which I think we all kind of knew he must have and felt terrible for. But Levy's down in the minors. We'll talk about Allmark later, but just for me, it's not that James Reimer was stood on his head and win. He was really good. He had, according to Money Puck, 6.3 goals saved above expected. That has, I think, the Senators, when they've been better than negative 1.5 goals saved above expected this year, are like 14-0-1.
The only thing I didn't like about Reimer's game, and it led to the goal by Monahan. I don't like him handling the puck.
Yeah.
And people are probably gonna blame Shabbat on that, and they're probably gonna blame Timmy on that. That's on Reimer. Reimer put those guys in a bad spot. And so if I were coaching, and I'm sure Justin Peters is going to say, hey, do us a favor, just stop it. You don't need to move it. We got guys that can move it. That's probably the only thing I could say where I'm like, well, he struggled, because he didn't. He played really well, except for that moment.
That's the one thing I had in my notes, was talking about that's not really you can tell he isn't used to playing with the defensemen and their reads and everything. So we're thinking alike here today, Pierre. But no, I mean, outside of that play, he made a couple really big saves on the PK. That was the one thing where it was it finally felt, the Senators are a bit sloppy on the PK and they get bailed out. They didn't have any egregious errors, but they needed their goalie to make some big saves, and he did, right? And again, I don't think he's the next coming of Carey Price at 37 years old, or Dominik Hasek, by no means. But they just needed a solid veteran presence. And I just feel, just watching this team, it reminded me more of last year, where you felt, okay, they're going to be in this game. It's going to get scrappy, but they're just going to be right there the whole way, because they're getting those extra saves, right? And I wish they did this, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. But I do think if Reimer can be that guy, we'll see about Allmark too. Just keep playing the hot hand. And if they can get decent goaltending, I think they're going to win a lot of games down the stretch and probably jump up into this playoff race. I
think we talked about it the other day. The biggest thing is to get back in the race. And so the way you get back in the race, you start stringing points together. So you look at, I know Montreal's an overtime loss, but you still get points. Detroit, overtime loss, you still get points. You go into Columbus, you get 2. Go into Nashville, get 2 more. Now you got traction in the standings. It's again, people don't, they're all looking just instantaneous gratification. You got build up to get that traction. And so they're doing that now. And I think there's a consistency to their game that will allow them continue to do that, which is really important, especially going into the Olympic break. My concern, again, with this team, the penalty kill, I'm just concerned about it. They can't take – if you're going to have a bad penalty kill, you can't take more than 3 penalties a game.
No.
You can't. That's number one. And number 2, and I'm seeing it more and more, and I like, you have notes, I got notes too. Some of the times they're in here, but my note is they got to do some work on establishing better down and low body position. They lose inside body position way too easy, not just the defense forwards as well. And that's easy. That's just coaching. They're going to have to work. And I know it's so mundane. It's so awful to practice. Trust me, it's a pain in the derriere. But they're going to have to, because that's the one. If I were going to make a Cole's notes, what does Ottawa need to do better? One of them is establish down low inside slot position so that the other guys can't get to loose pucks and the other guys can't establish screening positions. And for whatever reason, they haven't been able to do that, and they're going to have to work on it.
I mean, you talk about the forwards, just primarily on the defense. I think the issue is outside of really Tyler Clevin, and you'd say maybe Jake Sanderson, just because he is like 6'5" or 6'4". They don't have a lot of really physical defensemen that can move guys out of the way, right?
Zuby should be able to.
Yeah, and Jensen fights well for his size. Like, he's a big, strong guy, but they don't have like a Colton Parayko or a Dylan, like just a guy that just throws bodies around, right? Or even like Gudbranson on Columbus, who had
that's a great call.
Tough year in Ottawa.
I know he's an Ottawa guy, but that's a good. So that's so everybody's looking we got to add this. We got one thing subtly, and again, because you watch all the games, like you say, okay, what could they do better? That's one thing they could do better, and that's just a subtle addition. Like Spence isn't going to be that guy. Tommy Shabbat's not going to be that guy, even though Jensen's stout, because he's a stout guy. I don't know, at this stage in his life and his career, I don't think that he's that guy. Zuby should be able to do it a little bit better, and Jake is fine, Tyler's fine, but they need another body that can do that. They do,
and I know they know that.
It's boring to talk about. It's stinky. It's not sexy. There's no sizzle. But if you look at the teams that are winning a lot, those guys are doing that.
Look at Florida's deep.
Go look at Tampa. Go look at Tampa play. Go watch Eric Chernak. Like, I can give you all those guys that are clearing out. Diostas. Go watch what they do. Like, they're vicious down low. They got mean guys. It's allowed them to win for a long time. Buffalo's doing the same thing now. Matthias Samuelsson is savage. He never played like this. I coached his father. His father was a savage, but the kid never was. Now all of a sudden he is, and he's just one of many there. I think Darlene's become mean. Darlene's in Buffalo, and look they're winning. I think Ottawa needs a little of that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we don't need to go back to the top four once again today. Last night they were actually pretty good for the most part, and I think bigger picture with this team and just last night's game, that was Travis Green hockey. That's what he wants most nights. He wants, especially, I think he knows his team and feels like, okay, track meets, we're not the Edmonton Oilers. We can't just run and gun. So the way to win is really low event games, get out of the penalty box because their PK sucks, right? And just play kind of a really tight checking game. And I think, they have a lot of really good 200-foot players. Like, that lines up with, like, think about a really bad defensive player on their team. I can't really think of one. There's a couple guys that are better than worse, but it's like Pinto, Amadio, Giroux, Greig, all really good 200-foot players. Stutz has turned into that as well, right? So that was Travis Green hockey. It's not fun. It's not exciting, but it got them to the playoffs last year, and I think that's their roadmap to return, is to play those games, get a few more saves, and just keep collecting points. Like, they're on a 5-game point streak in terms of collecting. They've got 8 of their last 10 points they've collected, right? So they're in a good spot. And I think, again, this game in Nashville, we said it, you have to win both. If they win in Nashville, I really feel like, okay, you're back up. You're probably 4 or 5, maybe 3 to 4 points out of a playoff spot at that time. You have back-to-back at home. Try to split it. But if you win that game in Vegas, okay, we've now won, 6 of our last 7 or something like that, right? And you're feeling really good about yourself. And then the schedule kind of eases up after you play Colorado at home. So
that's the thing. You look at that Carolina, Vegas back-to-back coming off the road. That's a little bit tough. But, I mean, everybody's going through that. I know people don't want to hear this at home. You got to start watching the schedule and who guys you're chasing, who they're playing. Like, you got to hope that Pittsburgh's going to struggle tonight and tomorrow, tonight in Calgary, tomorrow in Edmonton. You got to hope, and that's all part of this thing. Now, I'm not saying that because they're in the same division, but they are in the same conference. And I would just say, like, they've been one of the bigger surprises, Pittsburgh. So that's one example. You just got to study who teams are playing, because I think now, if they can solidify tomorrow night in Nashville and come home feeling good about themselves, they are back in the race. I'm with Alex on this 100%. I think you nailed it. But you can't take a step backwards.
No.
They can't.
Right now, I think this team, until the Olympic break, like I have a story coming out at Sportsnet. It's like 8 things you want to see. And I didn't say this because it's more like kind of specific little topics. I want them to be in around 2 or 3 points out of a playoff spot. Hopefully they're in one, but by the Olympic break, like be right there. Not just like, oh, we need to go on a run. Like, oh, we're a 3-game winning streak from being in a playoff spot. I think that's where this team needs to go and be in the next stretch. I know it's a tough schedule against Vegas, Carolina. They're still not world beaters. Colorado, you give them that's not a hope and a prayer, but you're not gonna get too like wound up if they lose to the best team maybe ever, right? So, but then the schedule eases up. They play like Detroit, I think the Leafs. I have to look at it again, but it's not a terrible schedule. The last 5 games they finish in Philly, who's been struggling as well. So they have a stretch here. If they can beat Nashville, pick up a couple points against the tough teams in Vegas, Carolina, and Colorado. If you can weather that storm and that stretch you're in a really good spot, and hopefully you can start then going on another run. It's like a run and a run and a run basically for this team, but I think they definitely can do it.
Yeah, no, they can. It's going to be interesting to see because Reimer's played 2 now. You got to think Reimer's probably getting the next game in Nashville too with the day off. They're trying to get him into rhythm, and then we'll see. We'll see what happens with Linus going forward.
What maybe a good transition.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to, it's someone's mental health and everything, but maybe just you watched the interview. I watched it. What just maybe your general thoughts on his interview with Claire Hanna?
First of all, I give him a lot of credit, a lot of respect. That takes a lot of courage to do that. That's number one. Number two, I thought Claire handled that really well. That's a hard interview to do. I've done a bunch of those. They're difficult to do. So a lot of respect to her and the way she handled it. I felt bad. Somebody that's made their whole life in hockey, you hate to see anybody suffer going through this. It should be some of the most joyous moments of your life. They really should be. And if it's that difficult, then we got some learning to do too. My biggest takeaway, though, is just how mean-spirited people can be. I tell my children all the time, you can't take stuff personal because, if you do, you're going to be in a fight every day. People are always going to be nitpicking at you, especially if you live and work in the public eye. But the truth of the matter is that young man didn't do anything wrong. He's a goalie of an NHL hockey team. He's somebody's husband. He's somebody's father. He's somebody's son. He's somebody's brother, and people need to get back to being civil. Yeah. My biggest takeaway was this man's hurting because I think he didn't feel like people were being civil to him. That's hard to do. That's hard to think about.
Yeah. People might know that I'm a psychotherapist, so I have a little bit of, I think you could just see the emotion on his face, and you could tell he was, going through a lot. All I would say is like, don't rush back. Like, take your time. Like, if you're going through a world of pain, don't just take your time. And if you feel like hockey's a reprieve, then do that too. But I think, I've learned it, and I'm not even, I'm not a professional, I'm not famous or anything like that, but I get comments all the time. It's like, you suck at your job. Your writing looks like AI slop, which was a really good one. I'd give them that. But, but you get a lot of really kind of mean-spirited comments, and you're like, whoa, this is weird. I'm not used to that. And I think NHL players, it's like 13-fold, right? Yeah. And then it's like, they're bad people. And then, it's the threshold between personal to just critiquing the way they're playing. And I always try to think about it from my perspective is like, yeah, if it got personal, I'd be like, well, F you. Like, why are you bringing up my family? Why are you, which was what the rumors were, right? And again, like, just be mindful of what you say and to whom, especially online, because it's easy to send a quick text when you're upset, but that can really affect someone for a long time. And hopefully good for him, too, like being raw, emotional. Like, I think especially for men, we're not always the ones that like to cry and kind of be in that emotional state, and so good for Linus, and I really hope that he can kind of figure it out and feel better and be on the mend.
I love the way you said that. I agree with that 100%, Alex. He's a hockey player. He's not saving the world, and he's not curing cancer. He's a hockey player. And yeah, he provides a lot of great moments for a lot of people, and it's a great outlet for everybody, and they get paid handsomely, and that's just the reality of it. But he's still a human being.
Yeah.
He's still a human being. And that's what pained me the most, I think, watching that and hearing some of his statements, just is that he's hurt. He's hurt. Like, he's hurting inside.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, because I agree with this 100%. Don't rush back. And I'll just take it personal for a second. My dad went through serious, alcohol stuff when he was a living human, and he didn't drink the last 25 years of his life. But we did an intervention as a family. And I'm proud to say this. We all went, my two brothers, my sister, my mom, we all went out to Minnesota where he was in the hospital. And that was probably the most eye-opening thing I ever went through in my life. And the biggest thing I took out of it was my dad could have left there after 4 weeks, but he knew he wasn't ready to leave after 4 weeks. So he stayed another 4 weeks, and then he was ready to go. And he was awesome. The last 25, 26 years of his life, he was awesome. Awesome guy. We had so much fun together. But it's to your point. That just hit me. Don't come back till you're ready. Don't come back. Because I agree with that.
And he kind of talked about it in the interview, but like his dad was an alcoholic. Like, he had a tough childhood, and you never, like, the thing I always think about is there's always a reason and there's always a why with people. And even if they're struggling, like, if you do enough digging and kind of think about it, and he's had I know he's paid handsomely. He's been in the NHL, but everyone deals through a lot of things. But also, thanks for sharing that, Pierre. That was it's a cool story, and hopefully it becomes something that we look back at, maybe not fondly, but kind of as a place of like, okay, things kind of turned around for Linus in his life.
I love that. I do. Something good's going to come out of this for him. I believe that. It may not be this year.
Yeah.
But I think something good's going to come out. I think something good for his family, something good for him, and something good potentially for the Senators. If he can get back to where he is capable of being as an athlete, he'll make a big difference for the team. But that's up, again, I love your advice. I think that's so good. I haven't heard anybody really say that. I think it's really smart. I think it's good. Don't rush back. There's no need.
And like, yeah. And if you're 100% kind of like your dad, right? That's when you'll be your best moving forward, not just for tomorrow, but for hopefully years. So take your time, figure it out, get on the mend, and then hopefully, in a strictly hockey sense, I think that will make his game better. Because I think, you talked about kind of having panic attacks or, being panicked. Like, you could see it on his face that game. Like, I in Toronto, and you wonder how long that was on his mind. It's like, well, you don't just like flip a switch and all of a sudden you feel great, right? It's not that simple. So hopefully he can be on the mend, and then maybe, as you said, maybe it's not this year, maybe it's next year or whenever, but he plays, back to his peak and just finds joy for life and in the game of hockey.
Great. Well said. Agreed.
Maybe transitioning to, as best as we can here, into a guy who has a lot of heart, Ridley Greig. I just thought he had, I know I've said this multiple times, so I don't want to sound too much like repeating myself, but the amount of times he just starts shit with players all the time, and he goes up to Matthew Olivier, maybe like the toughest, strongest guy in the league that you never want to fight, and he's just like agitating him. It's just awesome. And then he has a beautiful goal, sets up the, you talked about the empty netter as well. I'd have to check, I think he has 6 points in his last 4 games. So he's
percolating. He's definitely percolating. It's interesting. I know I shared this story when I was working in Ottawa. He was playing for Brandon, and I happened to be in Western Canada, and they were in Edmonton and Red Deer. So I watched him play in 2 games, and all he was doing was starting stuff, And Edmonton at that time had a murderers row of players. Caden Gooley, who's playing for Montreal, was one of those guys. Matthew Robertson was another one of those guys. Sebastian Cossa, who's probably going to be the next goalie for the Detroit Red Wings, was one of those guys. And he, no matter how big or how small, he was going after everybody. And so after the game was over, I went down and said, "Hey, Ridley, let's chat." And we had an amazing chat. And I said, I think you could have a long career in the NHL. I'm really excited for you. But I said, if you want to fight every bad mother in the valley, you're not gonna make it out of the valley. You might make it out once. You're not gonna make it out 10 times. So you're gonna have to pick your spots a little better. He kind of gave me that little smile that he has,
Yeah.
that wry smile that he has, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh man, this kid's gonna get it. Somebody's gonna give it to him. But I so admire him. Really like his family. His sister was a really good college player. She plays in the
Yeah.
PWHL, Dara.
Yeah.
I got to know her when she was at Colgate University, and obviously
yeah.
I coached the dad, so I know the family a fair bit, and they're an amazingly athletic family. So I would love to have seen some of the internal competition in there.
Well, no, he told me like that they would really go at it as kids, and I actually, because I've actually interviewed Dara once for a PWHL story when I was covering them, and it was funny earlier I think it was last month, but she scored her first goal, and I think Ridley had scored his first goal in like a month too. Anyways, he's just like, "Did you see the goal?" Like, and it was her first career PWHL goal, and we're kind of joking like you should like try to score on the same game at the same time. How weird that would be, like almost prophetic. But no, he's a really good dude, and I always find it funny when you can get a laugh out of him. It's like that. It's a pretty surreal moment. And what he reminds me of is like that little kid on the playground that just like starts poking people, but then runs away. Right, kind of just like to aggravate everyone. I think that's Ridley Greig, but on the hockey, on the sheet of ice, where he just will like poke you, give you a little cross check, a little elbow, and then just kind of be like, "Oh, what? No, I never did anything." Right, and it's, but it's funny because you think of like Pest and like Brad Marchand is like this amazing talker, and Ridley Greig is not. He's a lot of really good things. He's not like the most talkative person you'll be around. So I find that kind of pestiness or whatever without the kind of vitriol or that kind of almost word kind of gumption that, you see from a Brad Marchand or other guys that are always kind of yapping in your face. Not having that, it's a kind of interesting dichotomy, but it's made for a pretty effective player.
He knows how to drive people nuts. Think about the Leaf empty net goal. That was legendary. He's always going to be remembered in Toronto and Ottawa for that. That's probably the number one example of what you're talking about. I have a good story idea for you. I don't know if there's one team in the National Hockey League that has two guys playing on the same team, Batherson and Greig, who both have sisters playing in the PWHL.
They do not, because I wrote a story about that.
Oh, did you already?
Yeah, well, no, it was 2 years ago, so maybe it changed, but I don't think there are.
I think they're the only two players on one
couple,
NHL team that have
Newhook,
sisters playing in the PWHL.
Newhook, I'm going out loud.
Newhook.
Luke Kunin, I think, or no, maybe he married someone in the league. But anyways, there's a fair bit of overlap.
But I knew Batherson's sister was playing at Syracuse because my buddy PJ Flanagan was a coach there. So I used to get the updates and I'd give them to Drake, or Drake would say to me, "Hey, could you find out how my sister's doing?" Ridley wasn't with us at that point. But I had seen Dara a fair bit, like I said, at Colgate, and you knew she was going to be a real good player and have a chance to be a pro player.
For sure. And I know just, we'll change topics a little bit, but I know Batherson for a while when she was at St. Lawrence University, which is pretty close. It's like a 2-hour drive. He would, like, if they played a Tuesday and then a Saturday at home, he typically, college, you play Friday night. So he'd drive up, watch her play, and then come back and play a game. So the Batherson clan, I know them a little bit. They're very close, and hockey / golf for that family. Very good golfers too. But I just think, like, back to on the ice with Ridley, he's just been a really effective player, and you can tell he's really kind of turning into something. I've really liked that line with him and Cousins and Tkachuk. Just big. Well, he's not big, but very tenacious on the forecheck. I think they have an element of speed. They're really good on the walls, really good possession. And I think Greig gives a little bit of an element of defensive, like, prowess, where he can be a bit of an insulator for maybe Tkachuk and Cousins to a lesser extent. So I just really like that line, and they've been playing really well of late. So I think the one thing I've taken from this game, and I don't know what you think, Pierre, I feel like the lines right now, if everyone's healthy on the forwards, I like them. I wouldn't really change them too much. I think it's all kind of makes too much sense. We have Giroux on the third line. You have Tkachuk maybe helping out Dylan Cousins, especially at 5-on-5, and then you have Timmy and Batherson, who I really like them together, just making plays all the time, like they did last night.
Has Zetterlund dried up a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. Let's go there. I think he's a good NHL player. To me, he's more of a middle six guy, I think, and he's paid maybe a couple million, maybe more than a middle six guy, although who knows with the rising cap. He's a good player, but he's a shooter. So because he's not Alex Ovechkin, he's not going to get you a ton, like 40, 50 goals. They come in waves, right? It felt like, after he scored that first goal of the season, then he got a bunch quiet down. Then he had I think 4 or 5 games where he had a couple of goals, and then he's quieted down once again. And I think he's just a streaky scorer, and he's physical. I don't find he has the greatest playmaking. It's very north-south, but he's an effective NHL player. But I think he's probably paid a hair more than he should, and but he's still a good player. I don't think he's like a negative for this team either.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that's more than fair. So prioritize what they need right now going into, potentially the roster freeze just before the Olympics.
Top 4. You've convinced me, Pierre, all year. Top 4.
Do they need to be a priority for them?
They do need a top 6 forward too. I think they're 2 big pieces away from becoming a legit, like, almost cup contender. I think I know it sounds funny when they're 19th in the league, but you look at their goaltending, that's, maybe that's the ultimate thing that holds them back. But I think top 4, I'd imagine you would agree as someone who's been kind of.
That's why I asked the question. Top 4 for sure. But the other thing, I'm looking at their neighborhood right now. I'm looking at what's Montreal got offensively, what's Toronto got offensively, what's Boston got offensively, what's Tampa got, what's Florida got. Just looking in their neighborhood in the Atlantic. And most of those teams, Florida, obviously, because injury, not as much right now, they all have quick strike offensive capability, and it's not on one line. It's like on 2.5. So you're right about that too. So if they get the top 4D, that's fine. But I do think there's a need for one more forward. I don't think they have it internally. I don't think that player exists in their organization. Potentially the defenseman does. We'll see with Hensler. Hensler, I should say. So there's, and Yakimchuk. I think up front, they're going to have to go outside. If they're really in a rush to do it now, they're going to have to go outside because I don't think that player exists internally.
Yeah, I think that's the issue is, we've talked about it a bunch of times. They just don't have enough assets to really big game hunt without probably trading a big player off your team. And so that's kind of the wager for me. Like, there's no, I doubt there's going to be this exact type of trade, but you look at the Matthew Tkachuk type of trade a couple of years ago. I think for the Sens, it has to be in that ballpark where, okay, we trade some pretty good players off the roster, but we get the superstar that we need. I think that's what they have to do. And it's hard because, they're not likely getting that in free agency. So it has to be a trade. What's the term, everything else, right? But I think that's the vicinity they kind of need to live in.
Do you think they'd ever look at Alexis Lafreniere?
I was talking about him with a buddy recently, so you're again same wavelength. I don't know what you think. You probably watch more Rangers than I do for sure. Is he a good player? I think so. Do I think that he has this unbelievable upside of a first overall pick that he's really untapped and needs to be kind of tapped into? I don't know. I feel like he's like a 50, 60 point guy, which is good, but I don't think he's going to be more than that. Maybe in a different environment. Like, the Rangers aren't a good team, so he's not like he's playing with the best players outside of Panarin and Fox.
I think they broke him. I think they've broken him there because I watched last night with LA, and there was a board battle, and he loses for a big man. He's losing a lot of battles, and not all the time, but sometimes when you see bigger, more talented guys having that happen, it's just because they're not totally engaged. They're just not ready to do what it takes to take it to the next level. that can be coached into somebody. It can. And I think part of it is changing the environment. This was supposed to happen when Mike Sullivan and Joe Sacco and David Quinn went there as a coaching staff. The environment was supposed to be clean in New York. I don't think it's ever been sloppier. And I don't think it's a reflection on those guys. I just think it's a reflection on how the team's been built.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if he wouldn't be better in a different location.
I mean, do I think he'd be an effective player for the Sens? Like, I think he'd definitely make them a better team. Like, if you, let's say, traded a second-round pick or something, or maybe even a first. I don't know if they trade a first right now for Lafreniere, just with they don't have any picks for the next couple of years if they did that. But yeah, I do think he'd be effective for sure. Do I think that's the needle mover to really take this team up? I don't know. Do you feel that he would?
I think he can be a top 6. I think he can be a good one. I think he can be a 75 to 80 point guy. I do.
Really?
I think he needs a breath of fresh air. He needs something different. I just think there's too much. There's been too much negativity, both inside and outside. So there's a lot of white noise outside the team. There's a lot of negative stuff, obviously, in the papers and online and all that. I don't know how much support he's gotten from the coaches. I haven't heard one way or the other, so I'm not going to indict them. I don't think it's fair to them. I do know that in previous regimes, this kid's had 4 coaches, I think, since he's been in the league.
Mm-hmm.
That's 3. Gerard Gallant, Peter Laviolette, and now Sullivan. So 3 since he's been in the league.
Yeah. Like, you're looking at his stats. Like, I just popped them up. Like, he had a really big year 2 years ago when they won the President's Trophy, but it was still only 57 points, which is good. Like, he's a good, effective player. But Jake Batherson has, 3 of those and likely more, right?
Drake's. Yeah, they're different.
They're different players, but
I think there's this upside there that hasn't been realized. So he's a name that's intriguing to me. Another one that I think is intriguing would be Jordan Kyrou.
Yeah.
St. Louis. I'd be surprised. They keep saying Robert Thomas is available. You got to have some players. You know what I mean? You can't just trade everybody.
I will say, if I'm the Sens, I target Thomas over Kyrou.
So would I. That's why I brought his name.
He's a better player. Also, he's like best friends with Brady Tkachuk. So like long term.
I would target him too. I'm telling you, I think
I would trade like the whole farm for Robert Thomas. I think he'd be perfect for this team right now. Like, he's
Robert
on the
would
right.
be a great ad. I know him and I like him very much as a person, but I know him as a player too, and he's a talented kid. So if you were to ask him, Lafreniere, Thomas.
Yeah.
Thomas.
But what's more attainable? Probably Lafreniere,
Probably
right?
Lafreniere right now.
Yeah. I do think, we were talking about it on the open, and I'm curious what your sense of it is. But if they can, let's say by the Olympic break, as I said, they can be 2 or 3 points out of a playoff spot. I think Staios will make a big move. I think if they're right there, like nip and tuck on a playoff spot, it won't be a rental, but I think he'll be like, okay, let's go all into, at least to some degree, and try to kind of augment this roster. But if they're still 5 points out, 6 points out in that vicinity, then he's probably like, okay, we'll probably shed some guys' salary, like just look at the unrestricted free agents. We don't need to say who at this point from this team, but like a Perron, Eller, I doubt Giroux. I think he's tied to Ottawa. But my point being is, I think where they are in the next 8 to 10 games is going to really change the complete dynamic of how Steve Staios goes into the deadline. And I think hopefully it means that he's going to be more aggressive to make this team better, because I truly think you add another, like even Lafreniere or Jordan Kyrou, like you make a trade like that, you're a better team, not just now, but into the future. And that makes your chances of making the playoffs even better, right? So hopefully they can do that just for this season selfishly, but also for the future for this team.
Yeah, agreed.
Before I let you go, is there anything else you kind of want to touch upon before we wrap this show up?
Most important game of the season, honest to goodness, it's coming up in Nashville. All this good work that's gone on over the last 5 games where they've put points in the bank, and huge win last night in Columbus. If you don't win in Nashville, it's all for naught. because all these other teams are winning around you. Look in the stand, look at the scores every night. They're all winning, and you don't want too many teams jumping ahead of you, because then it just makes it that much more difficult. So you got to take care of business tomorrow in Nashville. You have to
win in Nashville. Then if you can win that first game in Vegas on the weekend, I'm like, whoa, okay, you're back. Like I can see this team. Like, it's been such a bumpy year where the goaltending's let them back so much. If you start winning games, you start getting confidence, you start finding ways. Like, I can see they're in all these games.
Yep.
They can collect points. The 5-game point streak isn't surprising to me.
No,
so
I agree.
Just beat the teams you need to beat, and then hang in there with the best, and you start getting a bit of confidence. I think that's exactly what the doctor ordered for this team, or Dr. Pepper is the official sponsor. If Dr. Pepper, you want to sponsor a show, sponsor us. Anyways, shameless plug. But Pierre, thanks so much for taking the time and doing this. This was a blast, and hopefully another win in Nashville. So thanks, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.